2 weeks after his death galvanized the new movement, George Floyd has been laid to rest. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization now walking back those comments about asymptomatic coronavirus spread. And the original reality show is no more. Cops has been canceled after 31 years. Here's what you need to know. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need2Know podcast for Wednesday, June 10th. I am Jill Wagner with Carlo Burston. Hey, Carlo. Good morning there.
Jill, I got to say, I didn't even know Cops was still on the air.
Yeah, either did I, actually.
But you just mentioned my cardigan. I know most of you people can't see me right now, although we are doing these on video. But I have this thing that my wife says that I'm not allowed to wear out of the house because I guess it's like a woman's cardigan, but it's so comfortable. It's got these big pockets. I'm like becoming an old lady, I think, in the quarantine.
I kind of want to borrow that cardigan.
It's amazing.
All right, let's get to the news because, as usual, there is a lot of it. George Floyd was laid to rest next to his mother after a really emotional service in his hometown of Houston, in which his family implored the country to use his death as a rallying cry to end racial injustice. Reverend Al Sharpton called for more action against police brutality. 2 rows of police officers saluted Floyd's golden casket as it was brought into the church. Joe Biden delivered a video message to the family saying that he understood the weight of grieving in public.
There's pictures of the cops down in Houston saluting the casket, really pretty stirring, and I think could potentially become iconic. I linked to some of those in the newsletter this morning. And Joe Biden, Jill, you mentioned, he is, of course, no stranger to loss, right? He lost his wife and small daughter in a car accident in the way back in the 70s, and of course his son Beau died of brain cancer 5 years ago. And he's always very eloquent, I think, and when he speaks to people who are also grieving. That's one of the reasons why people like him, I think. Also, the New York Stock Exchange yesterday held a nearly 9-minute moment of silence, which I did not realize this, but is the longest in its history, which is pretty remarkable. And yeah, I watched some of the funeral. It was like you said, very emotional. It was very stirring. I thought his family did a really phenomenal job under the circumstances. I think most people agree that the best thing that can come from this, from Floyd's death and just from the last couple of weeks in America, is that we have this national reckoning on some of these issues that the country has really grappled with for a long time. But the strategic problem with movements, especially movements that start on the left. And I'm talking now about sort of like the defund police movement, the Black Lives Matter movement. Oftentimes they're very nebulous, right, when it comes to actually asking for things or demanding things. And I think it's very wise for people who want to keep this movement going that they look back on Occupy Wall Street from, I guess, what was that, 10 years ago almost now? Because that, I think, is a real lesson in what not to do. Occupy was started just like this, as a real watershed moment, which had a lot of backing from a lot of people. And it sort of just fizzled out, right? There was never really a leader. It didn't really have any concrete demands, and it just kind of, fell by the wayside. And I think, it's sort of like a lesson in how not to manage a national movement.
No, absolutely. And I feel like something's different right now in this country. It feels different. I don't think this is going to fizzle out. And it does seem like real things are changing. There are police departments that are banning chokeholds, or state legislatures that are banning police from using chokeholds. But
that is a good point, Jill. Go ahead. I was just going to say, that is a good point because, unlike Occupy, in which, to my knowledge, not a lot was actually changed. There have been remarkable changes just in the last couple of weeks, with the chokehold bans and with this law in New York that's going to unseal police disciplinary records, which I think will be a very big deal. So you're right. You are seeing more change, I think, than a lot of people would have expected even a couple of weeks ago.
and happening quickly. I mean,
Yeah,
it's George Floyd. It's been about 2 weeks. When you think about
yeah,
it, nothing happens with with lawmakers and laws,
right.
and like that is the slowest process ever.
No, it's true.
Okay, I want to get to this other story also because we talked about this yesterday. The World Health Organization has walked back now comments that one of its top scientists made, that asymptomatic coronavirus transmission was, quote, very rare. So we talked about this yesterday. The World Health Organization now saying that it just doesn't know yet how frequent asymptomatic carriers are, that it could be as high as 40% of the cases, which is more in line with the narrative that we've been hearing
Right.
since the start of this.
Exactly. And again, I want to preface this by saying that, these are scientists. Obviously, they're working through an unprecedented scientific and public health crisis. New information obviously is always coming out. They're under immense pressure from the public in terms of putting out information. So I really do try and give them the benefit of the doubt. But going from saying asymptomatic transmission is very rare to actually maybe as high as 40%, like that's not really an acceptable margin of error. And that's a real problem when people are depending on you for information like this. The problem with mismanaging communications, especially right now when no one really trusts anything to begin with, is it makes it so people just tune out, right? So people just say like, oh, the WHO, that's one of those organizations that just they don't know what they're talking about. They're always saying wrong things, or worse, right? You feed into the conspiracy theories that there's some sort of like front for George Soros or whatever. But we do have to reckon with the fact that they have made major mistakes. The WHO tweeted in January, famously now, that coronavirus doesn't appear to spread via human to human transmission. I mean, that will probably go down in history as one of the greatest mess ups in public health communications ever, right?
Absolutely. And by the way, there's a new report that found China, actually the spread may have been starting there as early as last August, even September.
Oh yeah,
Because researchers looked at satellite imagery and they found that hospitals had a lot more cars parked in them, so hospitalizations were up, and they also looked at Google searches, not Google, Baidu. And
their
found
search
that
engine. Yeah,
as early as the search engine, that as early as August and September there were a lot more searches for coronavirus symptoms. It wasn't called coronavirus at that point, but
sure.
things like coughing and all of the symptoms that come with it. But back to this asymptomatic spread, Andy Slavitt, I'm going to quote him again. He's the former health official under the Obama administration. He said that this is such a big mistake, from the World Health Organization, that he doesn't know how or even if their pronouncements should be covered. Like, that's how much credibility
Yeah,
this organization has now lost, and that's coming from a health official who
yeah,
relies
that's a shame.
on them, right? Remember, the WHO also praised China back in January for being open and transparent. We now know that perhaps they were just saying that as part of a PR campaign to actually get China to be open and transparent and share information about coronavirus. So
Right.
they're not in necessarily an easy position, but their credibility has really been shot.
One thing briefly my wife was telling me yesterday that I thought was kind of interesting, because WHO is made up of a lot of Europeans. It's based in Europe. I'm pretty sure that the top scientist was European, and my wife's European, right? So she was saying that there's a big difference here, because if you were holding a press conference with like health officials here, and somebody and one of them said something that was like sort of not the the straight line that you wanted out there, someone would have probably interrupted them and said like, don't take that back, or let's table that or something like that. She said in
Right.
Europe, like the culture is just, especially when it comes to like bureaucrats, which these people are, scientists and bureaucrats, the culture is just not one that people don't like that kind of confrontation. So what happens is you have somebody who sort of speaks out of line maybe, and nobody sort of interjects, and then it's just because the media coverage is so much, it just spreads like crazy, and they have to end up walking these things back. I don't know how true that is, but I thought it was kind of an interesting
That's super
theory,
interesting. That's really interesting.
right?
Becky with the with a
Becky coming
really
in hot with the
insightful, yeah, I like that
that
on a Wednesday
she's
morning.
our chief producer here.
Okay, on to just coronavirus in this country. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy has lifted New Jersey's stay-at-home order, ending one of the earliest lockdowns in the country. New cases in New Jersey have remained below 1,000 in June. That's down from a peak of above 4,000 in April. There are going to be
Daily.
limits, though, on,
Yep.
pardon? What?
Sorry, I was just clarifying daily new cases.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah,
There's
sorry.
going to be limits on indoor and outdoor gatherings, but they will eventually be raised. Carlo, given that New Jersey at one point tracking to be one of the most hard hit states, this is really great news.
It is. And it just shows you, a lot of the, the sacrifices that we made, Jill, not you and I specifically, but just in this country, especially here in the Northeast, early on, really did work, right? They really did help to bend the curve, and people should,
Wait,
people
by
should,
the way, sorry, we
yeah.
all did make sacrifices. As
No, no,
in,
no. I know.
we like, no, I'm saying not like when you're saying not me and you, like, I think collectively, but
Oh
additionally,
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
each individual does matter.
Oh no, you're right. I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it like that. I was saying more like we, as in collectively. But yeah,
Right.
absolutely right. I mean, I'm still sitting in my apartment here, what, 3 months into this, like barely
Exactly.
going outside,
As
wearing my
we're moving
cardigan.
out of my apartment in New York City and I haven't left the house in 3 months.
No, you're right. But I think it's important. And again, if you had like a leadership structure in this country in which people were good at communicating, they would say like, people really did sacrifice a lot, and it worked to a large degree, especially in states like New Jersey. My friends I have a fair amount of friends who live in New Jersey, and they were saying like one of the good things about this year is like the summer's not going to be so crazy down there, right? Because the Jersey Shore obviously gets insane. But now I guess maybe there's going to be more of an opportunity for people to head down the shore this summer and mess everything up. But who knows?
There was just a report that one party goer in the Jersey Shore may have been spreading around Memorial Day weekend. May have then spread coronavirus to a dozen people or more in
That stuff
Pennsylvania.
scares.
But I was
Yeah, those stories scare me. The super spreader stories.
The super spreaders very scary, especially when you talk about asymptomatic spread. I mean, presumably this
Yeah.
guy probably felt okay. And maybe tomorrow we'll talk more about what's happening in much of this country with Arizona, seeing huge spike in cases, almost out of
Yeah.
hospital beds, and there's not really a plan. The guidelines we talk about, these health organizations and credibility being lost, and a lot of states opened up not really following the guidelines from the CDC. And one of the
Yeah.
problems in Arizona right now is they don't have contact tracers. It's really hard to get a handle on where the spread is, and
Right.
how it's spreading.
And it just goes back to
So
what
we
we've been saying, Jill, about how oddly regional this feels, right? Like we're almost like not declaring victory, but we're in this new phase here in the Northeast, and like in the Southwest, it's a whole different story. Texas is still seeing record cases. It's very strange.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to jump on you about the that we all
No.
me and you sacrificed in particular, but I just mean like I think individuals should feel good about what they did. I
No,
think on a whole we responded well, but I also think this did come down to each person making really responsible decisions.
I agree. And one of the not to stay on this, but one of the things that's so enraging again to me is like we being the individuals, regular people, did give up so much and sacrifice so much to buy us time. Really, that's what that was about, right? The last 3 months were about buying us time. And the people who are in charge, I don't think in a lot of ways use that time appropriately, right? We still, we're still talking about testing, contact tracing, like. I
Yeah,
don't know.
these are systems that should have been in place.
Right.
Okay, really another really important story. Voters and election officials in Georgia reported hours long lines at polling stations yesterday, the primary day. The issues appeared to be with the new voting machines that were either not working or poll workers who didn't know how to use them. And the most significant wait times were in the metro Atlantic area. Georgia, as we know, expected to be a battleground state in November.
Yeah, not a good look there. I don't want to suggest that this was the result of like malfeasance or bad actors trying to suppress the vote. I haven't seen any evidence of that right now, but it's malpractice when you cover the story if you don't note that voter disenfranchisement in Georgia has a very long history. It's been a problem for a very long time. This is a state with a large African American population. It's currently run almost entirely by Republicans. Now, the election officials are saying that these problems had to do with inexperienced poll workers and a lack of poll workers because of the pandemic, and there probably is something to that. But there were also serious and credible accusations of voter suppression in Georgia just during the governor election back in 2018. So I think you got to keep all that stuff in mind. And like you said, Georgia is not just going to be a battleground state. Georgia may be the most interesting pivotal state to watch on election night in November. Democrats see an opportunity to flip it, not just in the Electoral College, but in Congress as well. But needless to say, they hopefully they have this stuff ironed out by then.
Absolutely. While we're on the subject of November, we do need to talk about this tweet from the president. We try to stay away from, the president's Twitter feed as much as possible, because sometimes it's just a distraction from the real news out there. But the president tweeted something yesterday, certainly deserving of mention. He put out a conspiracy that 75-year-old man who's in critical condition in Buffalo after he was pushed by police. So the president said that perhaps he was part of a Antifa operation. There is no evidence of that. Mitt Romney.
He called him an Antifa provocateur. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's Mitt Romney, one of the Republicans, coming out and saying this tweet was a shocking thing to say, that he's not going to dignify it with any further comment. I mean, Mitt Romney, not surprising that he would come out against the president, as he often does, but most people who normally defend the president can't even touch this because it's so ridiculous.
I mean, yeah, Mitt Romney, by my count, the only Republican in Congress to actually come out and denounce this. One thing that just always amazes me about President Trump is it's like, here you are, right? You're the president of the United States, the most powerful person on earth. You have access to the greatest intelligence gathering operation like in human history. And you spend time consuming just like the worst, most brain poisoning media. Like if it were me, there would just be so many other things that I would rather be doing. But anyway, the reason why I wanted to discuss this today, it's a really important case study in the kind of like human centipede of misinformation that is really threatening to destroy our democracy. And I don't think that's being too outlandish to say that. So this particular case, and just stay with me because I think that this is important, right? So this conspiracy theory, this started with a random Twitter person, a random user on Twitter, noting that this guy in Buffalo, Martin Gugino is his name, was, and I'm sure everyone's seen the video by now, right, was holding his cell phone when he was pushed by the police. And he was holding his phone in such a way that suggested he was scanning police radios, whatever that means, right? So there's no evidence of that. From there, it jumps from Twitter to a conspiracy theory blog called the Conservative Treehouse. At that point, it's picked up by a reporter who works at One American News, OAN, which is sort of this like super right-wing, like more right-wing Fox News. The reporter at OAN also moonlights at Sputnik, which is the Russian propaganda network. Now, President Trump sees it on OAN, which is now his sort of like favorite news outlet. And then he tweets it to his 80 million followers, right? So you have this human centipede, again, that used to have many more parts to it. It used to be like an internet board, then it goes to something like InfoWars, and then it jumps to the Drudge Report, and then to Rush Limbaugh, and then to Fox News, and then to Facebook. Now it basically goes from an internet board to a conspiracy theory news operation to the president. It's just it's remarkable, and it's really frightening in a lot of ways, I have to say.
And to your point, I mean, the president of the United States has access to real intelligence information. I would assume that if he wanted to, and if there was something that wasn't included in a brief, I'm sure that he could ask someone to look into it and actually get intelligence from real agents on the ground getting information. We wrestle with, is this something we should even cover? but in this case,
Sometimes you have to,
yes,
because
I
sometimes,
think.
it's really important. Yeah, sometimes it's really important to show, sort of like the behind the scenes stuff. But yeah, I agree. It's just also just the fact that this is, he's writing this like as the Floyd funeral is going on. It's just very crass, the whole thing.
Also, a small but growing list of tech and media firms now designating Juneteenth, which is the oldest national commemoration of the end of slavery, as a company holiday. Vox Media, Twitter, Square are going to begin this new policy this June 19th. Jack Dorsey, who runs both Twitter and Square, says that it will be day off. It will be a day off, excuse me, quote, forevermore.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't be surprised if you see this sort of start to pick up steam. But yeah, I guess we don't. There aren't really national holidays in June, right?
Flag Day, June 14th.
Yeah.
My birthday and the president's birthday,
When's your birthday?
June 14th.
My friend Gen's birthday is June 14th. I didn't know that. I thought you were July. Now I feel guilty.
No.
It's coming
About
up. What are
what?
we
And
going
you
to do
still have
for
4 days, Carlo. You have
it?
4 days to figure out a gift for me.
Well, happy birthday, and well, we'll properly celebrate next week.
Okay, the long-running reality show Cops has been canceled. The Paramount Network says it's removed the show from its schedule. There are no plans to bring it back. Cops aired on Fox from 1989 until 2013, when it moved to Spike TV, which is now Paramount.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I had no idea the show was even on, but I guess this is important in that it's a sign of the times, I guess, right? Police officers had long said that Cops was like a really important recruiting tool for them. And the argument against it was it's this kind of like unfair, narrative of police being these like superheroes and all getting the bad guys. I don't know exactly I haven't really seen that show probably in 20 years. But while we're talking about this kind of thing, something else that's out there this morning, HBO Max, which is the new streaming platform from Warner Media, they just removed Gone with the Wind from the platform. Now they say that they're going to bring it back with some quote historical context around it. Obviously, Gone with the Wind, about the Civil War, sort of like a celebration of the antebellum South. This is a little bit of a slippery slope, I have to say, and I hope I don't get canceled for saying that. But Gone with the Wind is, one of the greatest pieces of American cinema ever made, and I think bringing it back with historical context is fine if they actually do that. But just everybody just take a little bit of a deep breath when we're talking about this stuff.
I think that's good advice. All right, Carlo, let's finish this up on some good news. What do you have?
Yeah, so not even good news, but good news out of Washington, which you don't get that much these days. The Senate
No.
yesterday, the Senate voted unanimously to confirm General Charles Brown to run the Air Force, which makes him the first African-American leader of a military branch in America, which is incredible. It was in the works for some time. It's not like it was a response to the current moment. But the timing, I guess, just worked out that way, and it's a major milestone. General Brown, really well-regarded former Air Force pilot, he is now the highest-ranking Black official at the Pentagon since Colin Powell, which was back in the early 90s. And like I said, a unanimous vote, I think it was 98-0. So kudos to him.
Absolutely. All right, my good news, Anderson Cooper. This is very light, but Anderson Cooper opening up about being a new dad. So he's talking to People magazine, and what he said I thought was great. So I'm just going to read it directly. He said, "When I was 12 years old and knew that I was gay, I thought about my life, and it always upset me because I thought I'll never be able to have a kid." So he says this is a dream come true for him. He also talks about being more invested in covering the news and world events right now. And certainly there's a lot going on. He says there's something about having a child that makes you feel connected to what is happening. And you want to make sure that the world this child is growing up in is a better one. And you suddenly worry much more about the future of all of us. I think that that's true. I've been doing news. I've been in the news biz for many, many years right now. And yeah, when you have a child, you're like, okay, wait, you want to leave the world a better place.
No, yeah, I love that. I love Anderson Cooper too. The picture of him on the cover of People with his baby is amazing. His baby looks like you know how newborns often look like especially newborn boys often look like old men, like in the beginning.
And all newborns, even newborn girls
Yeah,
look like old men. I mean,
yeah.
like newborns
Okay,
are just
so
you
that's like
think
a known
the
thing. Okay.
parents think they're cute, but I think
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
normally you look back and
yeah.
realize that they're a little
Still
funny
needs a little
looking.
more
But sorry,
time in
what
the
were you
oven.
saying?
No, no, no. I just thought that the it's a very cute picture. I linked to it in the newsletter today if you guys want to see it. But yeah, I love AC. So good for him.
His baby actually is pretty cute.
He looks like an
We
old
look
man.
back at we look back. I mean, little babies are just. I don't know. Okay, let's. I think
Well,
we should end
you
it
okay?
here
You're a
before we
little
get in
bit.
more
You
trouble.
don't know because you put out a child into the world that is like the world's cutest little angel, like from the minute she was born. So you're biased. You don't know that the us normal people have to have babies that need to cook a little bit.
She is pretty. She is pretty damn cute. Okay, let's leave it there. That's what you need to know for Wednesday, June 10th.
All right, guys. See you tomorrow.